About a month ago now, I did this super cringe thing that a lot of content creators do, and I made a review of a game that had only been out for 1 week and that I'd only been playing for 1 week. And this is just something we got to do, right? We got to keep up with that algorithm. And to be fair, for gacha games, I do think it is a good thing to see how the game is after a week, because if you're not hooked in that initial experience, you're not going to keep playing in the long run. So I do think it was fair for me to make that video, but at this point, I have continued to play Zenless Zone Zero every day for a whole month now, a little over a month, I guess. And so I can kind of give a more comprehensive review of how I think the game performs, what I think it needs to do better, and just how I've been enjoying it overall. The first thing I want to touch on is the combat in this game, because that is kind of the main draw that people start playing this game for. So to give you guys some context, I have fully cleared all of the notorious hunt bosses at the highest level, at level 65. Yes, I've done that this week. And then if you go over here to Shiyu Defense, you can see that I have gotten S rank on floor 7. So I have like fully cleared everything. And I guess I can show you this too. And Hollow Zero, of course, I have cleared the Withering Garden. So I have completed all of the difficult content in this game. I have like tackled the hardest combat challenges. So I think I am more qualified now than I was, a month ago, a week into the game, to talk about the combat that we have experienced so far. I think that in my initial review, it was still very unclear and very mysterious as to whether the end game was going to be super difficult compared to like when we were very underleveled trying to push Shiyu Defense and everything had like 1,000,000 health, it felt like. But now that I've cleared all of the content in the game, I kind of have a lot of my characters maxed more or less. I can confidently say that I don't think that the end game is very difficult at all. I think it's going to be very manageable for most people to clear it as soon as they get to Internaut level 50 and they can get their main DPSs up to level 60. Because I'll tell you what, when I first cleared Shiyu Defense, it's not in this video. I think in this video I have a good amount of level 60 characters. But when I first cleared it, I had my main DPS is at level 60, and then my supports and stunners were still level 45 with no disc drives on them and pretty crappy underleveled weapons, and I was basically able to solo them with my main DPS and just kind of using the buffs from the supporters even when they were level 45. So it was not a problem for me. Now, there wasn't very many difficult enemies in Shiyu Defense this time around. There wasn't like any crazy big bosses, but even if there was, like I said, I've cleared the main 3 weekly bosses as well at level 65, and even those I am not finding difficult anymore. I was finding them super difficult, like I could basically get 3-shot when I was under leveled, but now it's like I don't feel like it's very dangerous at all, and they all die pretty fast. Now, in that, I am not trying to say at all that I don't find the combat fun or engaging. In fact, I fall more in love with all of the characters and how they're designed every day. And the team building aspect of the combat is amazing. I love that, and I think it's going to get even more interesting as we get these disorder teams and more like anomaly characters. I think that has a really bright future. But I am going to go back to that criticism that I made in my first video, and that a lot of the enemies, or pretty much all of the enemies to be completely honest with you, just feel like target dummies, and that is kind of what makes it less engaging for me. Even the bosses, I'm finding that, I had this initial take that, oh, you have to be careful with all your parries, and you do, but the parry system, I feel like it's just too free. It makes the bosses too easy. It adds too much to their daze bars. And it makes it feel like, yeah, I can set up all of these crazy combos, but it's not difficult. Part of setting up the crazy combos from the teams that you build is like having to do that while having to deal with these interesting mechanics. And there's no enemy in the game really right now that has interesting mechanics. I think that the twin dancers are probably the hardest and maybe the most interesting fight at this point, but even them still just have too many parries, and I think a lot of that is just like arbitrary difficulty from there being 2 bosses that you have to deal with. Like I said, I really enjoy the combat, and I'm gonna keep playing it, of course, but I do think that they should probably move away from the free parries and move more towards like the red lights where it's orchestrated hits, but you can kind of dodge it and you can't parry it and just rely on that system, because they just need more interesting boss fights. That's all I'm trying to say. Now, I will get this out of the way right now. You can see my roster is all level 60. As I said before, like only my main DPS, as in Zhu Yuan and Ellen, were level 60 when I did my first Shiyu defense clears. And I've been max refreshing pretty much every day since the game started. Since I hit level 50, I've only been doing like 2 refreshes a day. So some people in the comments might say like, well, you've been max refreshing, you're wailing or whatever. But everyone will get to this point, and they'll even have like better characters than I did on my first clear. They'll actually have like a full team of level 60s that have good disk drives, and they're going to be able to do that content so darn easily. Now, I know that they are planning on adding more, because I mean, if you go to Shiyu defense, you can see that there's 2 empty tabs here. It just says empty, literally says empty right here. So of course they're going to add some more stuff, but I hope that they just scale it up and make more interesting boss fights, because even if they add a bunch of health, they make the level differential a little bigger, it's still going to be the same thing, because none of the bosses are going to be dangerous really. So that's my main problem, and that is what I got to say about combat. Let me know what you guys think. Now, I can't remember whether or not I had actually finished the whole main story in my initial review. I don't think so, because it was only like a weekend. I think it took me a couple weeks. But I haven't played it in a few weeks, obviously, because it's done. But looking back at these cutscenes, I'm just remembering how great it was. I'm still in love with it. That's kind of what really pulled me into this game. I don't know if I would have kept playing if it wasn't so good. All of the cutscenes, you can tell they put a lot of TLC into. I love all the character designs. Some people still saying they're mid. I don't really understand it. It's definitely different from a lot of other gacha games, but I love all the character designs. They all have great personalities. You can tell, like, you know, I can look at Ambi and imagine how she would act in a certain situation, even outside of the writing, which is a good sign that they did a good job of character building. But I'm really invested in the main story. I kind of like the character stories. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't even full cleared all of the character stories just because it's so time consuming. But really love the story, and I think that is still a highlight of this game, and I'm glad they're focusing on that going forward. And on the topic of all those character stories, it's really reminding me how much content was in the 1.0 version of this game. Yeah, I've cleared all of like the combat content, but really what the bulk of the content in this first patch is like all of the quests and all of the character quests. It could take you like literally probably over 50 hours, maybe 60, 70 hours. For a free-to-play game, that is a lot of content. To be honest, I'm one of these lazy gacha players. I play like 8 different gachas right now, and so I haven't even completed all of the commissions, which is super lazy. But if this was my main game, I would probably still be chewing through some of the content, and I really appreciate that about this game. And it makes me a little more forgiving that 1.1 is not going to continue like the main story quests. If you guys have not heard or watched that 1.1 special program, 1.1 or version 1.1, like the first big patch of ZZZ, is going to have a lot of story content, but it's going to be outside of the main story quest. So it's going to have like this focus on Jane Doe, Qing Yi, and the other police girl, Zhu Yuan. So it's going to be a lot of story, but kind of outside of the main story. Maybe it'll have like repercussions in the main story and kind of the overall world, but it's going to be a little side venture. So I'm totally okay with that, because as I said, 1.0 has so much freaking content that I'm sure a lot of players, especially if you're like not like me and not been max refreshing every day, you still have a lot of work to do on your account. And so I think 1.1 is going to be a perfect patch, because if they would have come out with like a bunch of new content, I bet half of their player base couldn't even engage with it, because they're still just kind of slowly leveling up and slowly completing all the 1.0 content. So really happy with all of the content that they came out with in 1.0. It's really impressive, actually. On the topic of content, another thing that I thought that they really needed to continue to grow on is the casual content and the events that they bring out in this game. That is Hoyo's bread and butter, and they have delivered in ZZZ. I can't even count how many events there were. Okay, maybe it wasn't that much. I think it was maybe like 4 or 5, but 4 or 5 in one patch is a lot. I mean, of course, it was like little ones too, with this 141 exclusive bazaar where you just go kind of turn something in. But there was the arcade one, there's the Bangbu one, which had its own big story. There was a couple other ones that I can't even remember, but they've done a great job in bringing us this event content to kind of keep players just excited to log in about something new, right? You know, you could argue that it's more FOMO stuff, but this is kind of Hoyo's bread and butter, and I really appreciate that they have kept up with so many events in 1.0, and I'm really excited that they already announced that there's going to be a lot more of that type of stuff in 1.1. I've said it a million times, but Hoyo players, I think that the majority of them are pretty casual, and they really like these events where it's not necessarily just like super hard combat all the time. And I think they're nailing that so far. Great job, Hoyo, on that. I mentioned earlier that I am more of a gacha gamer than just like a Hoyo player or a Wuthering Waves player or just a ZZZ player. I play a lot of games at once, and so something that's valuable to me is my time and how long the daily grind is going to take for me. In my first video, I mentioned how good that I thought it was, and I still think it is so fast. I love it so much. Love being able to clear 100 energy at once. I can do it really fast, right? And the errands, it's like I teleport to Hal, I do my scratchy, I go do my video store, I get my coffee, and then, you know, I'm done with my errands for the day. I go spend all my energy and I'm pretty much done. I did like, you know, at first I was doing all these character stories, but I've kind of unlocked all the backgrounds that I want and for all the characters that I use, really. And past that, I haven't been engaging with it. I'm not like trying to be a completionist here. You can see I have like Ellen, I just have all the waifus basically, right? I have like Nicole, Juyeon, and Ambi, and not too concerned with it. Past that, I'll probably unlock some of the other ones eventually, but it's not really a requirement. Other than that, you know, even if with that added on, the daily grind is maybe 5-10 minutes, and I, as a gacha gamer, love that. This game respects your time, and then, you know, on the weekends, I can log in, do my Shiyu defense, do my big bosses, and do the fun stuff that I actually want to do, and feel like I've prepared throughout the week with minimal time investment, right? ZZZ is a great gacha game if you're just looking for something casual that you can play for a couple minutes every day. Past that, guys, I think I really touched on everything that I covered in my first video, and maybe even a little more. Overall, I love the game. I'm gonna keep playing it. I'm gonna keep covering it on this channel, so please subscribe if you're not already for more ZZZ content. I'm super excited for the future, and I'm glad that this is just kind of a casual game that I can add onto my roster and still feel like I'm engaged with it when I do want to kind of sink my teeth in and sit down and play for a couple hours. I think it really hits that perfect spot for me, right? Where I don't feel like I have to be logged in every day for a long time, but it's still engaging. I love it so far, and I think they're nailing it. Just maybe work on the difficulty of the combat, even though, you know, I don't think that that's their main focus. I'm smarter than that. I'm saying that as a selfish thing, and I don't think that they're necessarily going to make the combat harder. I just want it to be a little more engaging, you know, make the bosses a little more interesting. That's my biggest criticism. Outside of that, love the game, love the characters, love the casual content. It's amazing. So let me know what you guys think. Are you still playing? Are you still enjoying it? What do you think they could do better? Let me know down in the comments. If you're still watching, please give it a like and subscribe if you'd like to. Really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.